Welcome to the Coffee House Writers Group podcast, the show where we talk about writing while drinking coffee as a group. If that's too on the nose, too bad. Let's start the show. Alright, earlier I had Bill Wilbur on. We will get to my conversation with him in a bit. He is the editor of the Beggar's Crossing Coffee House Writers Group Anthology book, which is for sale. We will talk about that a bit later. It's a great way to support the group, the organization. And what Bill ends up talking about a little bit is what gets him writing, what keeps him motivated, what keeps him going forward. And I think it's a great thing to end up talking about, what drives us and what keeps us moving when we have such demands on us as writers, such a demanding industry, critics through other writers, through what the agents and editors demand of us just to get in through the front door, where so few of us actually make something of ourselves, where we get to be known names, where we get our books in Barnes & Noble, on Amazon, wherever we get published, one of the big five. So what is it that keeps us going? Is it money? Probably not. Hopefully not. Most writers don't end up making much of anything to themselves. Most people end up never being able to support themselves on it. What attracts people to it is the alternative work schedule of just making your own time, deciding where you work, being your own boss. Is it that lifestyle? Is it just because us people really like to write and we have this motivation to create? Or is it something else? Is it having your words down that can live on? Is it that sense of immortality that now we see a bunch of writers from the past now have? Homer, his memory, thousands of years old, he is never going to die. He has that immortality, and we can expect other people in the more recent past, Mark Twain, other people who just live on throughout, and we expect to continue to live on. Are we looking for that? Is it because we see opportunity to make all of these things happen, no matter where we come from? Because writing is a very level playing field. It doesn't care about your background, your race, your sexuality, your class, education, whether or not you have a master's or a doctorate, or if you didn't even graduate high school. If you can write, if you can put your words on the paper and it's great, it does not matter at all where you come from. But it's hard work. You have to use, I think, both sides of your brain, not just the right side of your brain, which is deemed responsible for the creative part of yourself. I think it also needs the left brain that is the critical thinking, the thing that helps you do math and physics and make inventions and things that have made humanity what it is today, technology-wise. And I think it's the same with philosophy. Our philosophy has coming through both things, for the most part, critical thinking philosophy, not just, what is it that moves the sun from one side of the sky to the other before we know the actual answer. So many of us end up coming home from our work, our vocation, where it's just vocation, nothing more. And we come home and we work some more. We write down, and it is difficult work. And many people, we also have all of these outside voices telling us that it's too hard, it can't be done. A lot of people end up not doing it themselves because they're just told that there's no way to make it happen. That is for the lucky ones. It's for people that have connections, or those that are born with these unrealistically beautiful minds. So what is it that does it? I can not answer for everyone. I want you guys to think about what motivates you. For me, I've had a lot of time to think about this. And I know that for me, it's the last passion that I really have left that I can make something with. I can hopefully live off of someday. that it's not just what the world has space for and I can make money off of, or what I'm good at. I'm not good at everything, but there are some things where my talents could be probably better applied to jobs that make more money on the regular than writing. Writing to me is transformative. It's a mission, and I have stories in my head that are tales that are not made yet, and I feel like they really should be. I think that what I have in my head belongs to the world, and I would like to share it. While a lot of people can write, nobody else is me. So my story is going to be different from everyone else's, and so is yours. Yours is going to be different than mine. It's going to be different from anybody ever having this chair to have a conversation with, to do a podcast with. There's a lot of people that do fall into stereotypes, and they're comfortable in that. But if you're a writer, you probably don't fall into that because you're thinking of something more broad than what you've experienced. More broad than what fits tightly into a cliche of a person. So in order to pursue this passion of mine, I at some point moved to Los Angeles. And I was very apprehensive at making this jump because I was changing not just career paths, but I was changing what type of job I would have for the future. Because I come from science, and those are the jobs that I've had, pretty much. I mean, I worked in retail and at a movie theater. Yeah, I've loved stories for a while. One of the retails is Blockbuster. Anyway, I anticipated non-success. I anticipated that this may not work out, and I needed a safety rope to climb myself out of. My dad definitely saw this exactly when it was happening. What I wanted to do was not bring my dresser, not bring furniture or items that I would not need in a short stay for a short period of time. I fully intended when I moved here that I would be sleeping on a cot or a futon for my stay, and my parents are very generous. They helped get me a decent bed, which is a great investment. You spend a third of your life on a bed. Anyway, he knows me very well. He and I are a lot alike, and I've met nobody more like myself than my dad, for better or worse. I love my dad, and he knows that I really love Batman. My dad took a story from Batman, specifically from The Dark Knight Rises, the movie, the third movie in the Nolan trilogy, which people don't like as much, but I mean, it followed one of the best movies of all time, so its expectations were unrealistically high. In that movie, if you're not familiar, Bruce Wayne, Batman, he can't make the jump that is necessary to escape a prison. Where this prison leads into open air, there's a series of ledges where he can jump, and if he just made the jump, he could make it and crawl his way out. But only one prisoner has ever made the jump before. One of the old men who is there explains to Bruce why he can't make the jump, and it's because he has the rope attached to himself, so that if he fell, he wouldn't break his neck and die. My dad was telling me that I have the rope. And Bruce, when he took the rope off, he made the jump because he knew this was it. This is it or die. The fear found him, that he just has no other choice. This is it. And that's when he puts his full effort toward it. That's his full thing. That is something I now live by. I think of this career path now as writing or bust. But no matter how this ends up, this whole writing thing, I'll know that I put everything toward it because this is it for me. I'm going to make this work. That I've had some validation with an honorary mention I've mentioned before in the Writers of the Future contest. So I know that there's at least something there, that I'm not just kidding myself. I have some sense of validation, and a lot of people tell me that I'm at least okay. I get pretty positive feedback most of the time. So I'm making the jump. It's scary, but this is what I'm going to do. I have other motivations as well, not just for not having the rope. Death is the ultimate motivating factor. We have short lives. They really are short. Not just ourselves. I'm not going to tell you live life to the fullest or any sort of overspoken how you should live your life like that. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Other people have limited lifespans too. People that I love are close to me. People who put their faith in me. People who have invested something in me. Because I haven't done all of this on my own. I haven't. I could never be here where I am right now without the love and support of my friends and family. Without this writers group, I wouldn't be where I am today. That's not to say where I am now is at the top of the New York Times bestseller list, because that's not where I am, but I'm thankful for where I am right now. I see a path forward. I see that I can get to where I want to be. These people who have put their faith in me, where I haven't always felt like I deserved it. My grandpa was one of those. He died a few years ago. He never got to see me make it. Me become what I ultimately wanted to be. He was the bravest man I ever met. I know a lot of people lose grandparents as they get older. It only makes sense. You can only hope that as a parent or grandparent that your child or grandchild outlives you. And for most of us, it'll be the case where we outlive our to-be ancestors. But I thought I would have my grandpa around the longest. My dad's dad. I thought I would have him around the longest. He was a healthy guy. He swam laps pretty much every day. He lived with me for a while, my family. I was really close to him. And he was a genuine good man. That it wasn't just childhood hero glasses that I was looking him through, but fully formed and experienced adult lenses, where I could evaluate this man, and that's all he was a man, no more or less. I could see that he was a great person that you don't see around all the time. I don't want to have that happen again, where people who mean so much to me, put so much faith in me, don't see me make it. So I'm doing this for them. One of the great inspirations for me, motivating factors, was also the death of a creator who was taken from us way too early. You may have heard of him. His name is Monty Ohm. He passed last year, quite unexpectedly, suddenly. And Monty, you may know him best as an animator, director. He worked for Rooster Teeth, a very popular online entertainment company. They make Red vs. Blue, which is the longest web series of all time, still running. He created his own anime series called Ruby, R-W-B-Y, Ruby. Things that I genuinely loved as well. Online you get this closeness with creators because they share more than just what they create. They share parts of themselves as well. And that's one of the great things that I think has been a step forward that the internet has driven, that we're connected with these people that are creating things now. And I was pretty connected with him. He made things with this sense of urgency and time, where he had so much going on. He understood that the limiting factor in all of us making things was time. He lived with this urgency. He, at such a young age, created a franchise. He did things that I could only dream of doing. And because he lived with such a high sense of urgency, he ended up doing those things before he was taken from us way too soon. The limiting factor for all of us is time. For creating, for living, for doing everything that we want to do. Because we don't have an unlimited amount of it. A lot of people will write when they retire because now they have the time. They didn't make time earlier. It wasn't a priority. And it doesn't need to be everybody's priority, but for me, it's a priority because it's what I want to have on my tombstone. I don't want a tombstone, but my figurative tombstone. Do what you want to do, be what you want to be, and just go for it. And that's the motivation that drives me. So now we're going to talk with Bill Wilbur, talks about what motivates him, why he is involved with us, Coffee House Writers Group, as much as he has been. He's done all of this with no financial profit of his own, just to drive himself forward. He's going to tell us what propelled him to help make this anthology a reality. Because it's a lot of hard work, and we need to know why people work hard. Because it's not something we're naturally inclined to do when there's such an easy alternative of just not working. So without any further ado, here's Bill Wilbur. How did you get involved with the Coffee House Writers Group?
I was looking for a writers group locally, and my wife actually went to high school with Christine, who runs the writers group. So
okay.
It worked out well. I met her 6 years ago, been in and out of the group for a while, and here I am again.
So what were you looking for a writers group for? Do you have something finished product you wanted critiqued?
No, I need the push sometimes in my writing. I need to be accountable. My wife does that very well, but I needed a bigger audience, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to make sure to keep writing.
Right.
I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that I don't just put it off.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So what did you start sharing with the group when you first joined us?
I think a couple of short stories. I was working on a collection of short stories to publish, so I brought a few in.
Okay. And did those eventually get published?
They did. Yeah. They're in my book called Dahlia and Other Stories.
Dahlia and Other Stories. Who published that?
That was published by Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Was the San Dimas group that you were with at the time?
Yes. Always has been.
Always has been? Yeah. You're from around up there?
I am. We're from up in that area, and I guess we're about midway to the Orange County group, too. Is it Fullerton, I think they do?
Yeah, it was Fullerton. Now is in Anaheim.
Okay. Yeah. But, I grew up in that area, so it was easier for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. So how did you first started getting involved behind the scenes with Coffee House Writers Group?
That's been pretty recent, actually. Christine asked me a while ago, a year or two ago, and I just was way too busy and couldn't commit. And she was looking for somebody to run the meet and greets up there in San Dimas, and she didn't have anybody. And I told her that I could probably commit to, a year's worth maybe. Turned out to be about 6 months, but it got me involved in the group and working with Christine so much. We started sharing ideas. She shared where she wanted to go with the group. I told her, well, I probably help you here, and I might be able to offer this assistance, and it sort of grew from there. Did
you have a particular skill set that you thought, I can bring this to the group that we need?
Overconfidence. Overconfidence. Yeah, that's my Achilles heel. I believe there's not much I can't do. I've been writing for a really long time, since my early 20s. So I felt that I knew structure, and I felt that I knew punctuation, and I felt that I could offer all of that. So when the idea of an anthology came up, and she said she had nobody to spearhead it, and so I volunteered because I'm cocky and overconfident. But it was a wonderful experience.
What made you feel like, besides the overconfidence, yes, I can do this, I got this, or did you just want to do anything and this is what was in front of you?
No, I'm really interested in reading new writers, and if you give me the control over something like that, I got to pick the theme, and I got to design the whole book from start to finish. And that was something that I felt was in my wheelhouse. It was something that I enjoyed. And then I got to read all of these new writers that I hadn't had a chance to read yet. And that was kind of the payoff for me.
Okay, cool. So why did you end up picking what you picked for the group? How did that process come through? The anthology. The initial idea for the theme, you mean? Yeah.
The theme of it was I started a short story about 20 years ago that took place in an abandoned city or town, very much like Beggar's Crossing in the book. And so that was sort of my jumping off point. I'm like, man, I wish I had done something with that story. And then when this came up, I thought, well, we need a secluded place. What kind of theme could we come up with that could lend itself to different genres? And so that was sort of stuck in my head. And then I built on it from there.
Okay. And so I read your story that was in Beggar's Crossing. Is that have a lot of resemblance to the old story, or is
Not
it
at all.
no,
Not at
really?
all. Just the fact that there's a deserted town in the desert. That's the only thing different.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing the same. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil what's already in there for people who haven't read it so far. It's a great anthology. A lot of the writers that I've come to know pretty well are in it. I'm really proud of them.
Yeah.
Uh,
They did a great job. We put the word out and gave them 6 weeks. I think we gave them 6 weeks at the outset. And for the first 3 weeks, I heard nothing. Nobody called me with a question. Nobody emailed me. I got nothing for 3 weeks, and I was already starting to sweat, And I'm like, well, we have 6 weeks, so maybe things will start happening. And then they started coming in.
yeah. And then that was, I guess, into people just trying to get them in at the last minute as much time as they could on it.
Right. Honestly, we had one story to backtrack. We had one story that came in the very next day after we announced it.
That's
the
crazy.
very next day came in. It's in the anthology. And from then, we had a 3-week period of nothing. And I thought we need at least 12, hopefully 14 or 15 stories to fill a book, I started getting nervous. I told Christine I was going to open it up to some other writer friends of mine just to see if they could help out and fill it in. Yeah, I think it turned out well. I think everybody sort of stepped up to the plate. We had a couple stories where I felt could have used another pass, so I mentioned that to the authors, and they both did it. Two or three of them. There were three of them, I think. They all did it. They all went in and sort of smoothed out the rough edges. Yeah, I think the book is stronger.
Very good. So we had several different kinds of stories in there. People coming from all different places. Let me go ahead and read the prompt for those who are unfamiliar what it is. All right, so the prompt is, it is present day. Their characters find themselves in a deserted town in the Arizona desert called Beggar's Crossing, where red cliffs loom up all around, keeping the town hidden. They encounter a mysterious old man who sports a long white beard and walks slightly hunched over using a cane. The town shows signs of habitation, but the old man is the only person your characters see. It is up to you why they are there, but before they leave, your characters must experience magic, either good or evil, and they must accidentally leave something behind when they go. Do not try to explain who the old man is. He should remain a mystery. Character, plot, and conflict are all up to you. How big of a range did you feel like you got from... For me, it's a very specific prompt. How big of a range, how much creativity do you feel like you got in return?
I was worried about the prompt at first, right? I thought it's way too narrow of a prompt. It lends itself to a creepy story quite a bit, but I didn't know that it was going to be broad enough for everybody. I had some complaints about that. I had some people that said it's too narrow. But I created that prompt based on a writing contest that I enter every year, where they give you just that type of prompt, and you have to write a story within a week to their prompts, right? And so I thought, well, let's see, if I get too much pushback or too much blowback from the other writers, then maybe we'll loosen it up a bit. But I didn't have a story of my own in mind at the moment. I wasn't planning on writing one. I wrote one because I thought we might not have enough. But I was amazed at how big of a cross section of genres that we got. We got everything from flat out horror to flat out science fiction to a little bit of a romance story in there. There's a little bit of a supernatural. There's a little bit of reconnecting with family. There's all kinds of stuff in there. It blew me away with that kind of prompt, that these people could come up with such a vast cross section of stories. It was amazing to me. I thought that I would be reading a lot of the same things, and it's funny because some of the stories have some of the same things happen within them from writers who don't even know each other. But it surprised me. It surprised me too, even though the prompt was very specific. Not everybody followed it to the letter, and Christine and I had to decide how strict we were going to be on that. And the reality was, our feeling was, if the story was a good story and it loosely resembled what we were looking for, then it got in.
Yeah, better just to have the good story in there.
Right. It wasn't my goal to exclude anybody. I felt like anybody who wanted to be in it and was willing to put the work in if they could tell a cohesive story, which it's a group of writers, so you hope they do. And they did. So we weren't looking to exclude anybody. We didn't, actually. Everybody that submitted got in.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
And something that I've found during my brief education of writing itself, because I studied mostly other things, that the professor would have a very narrow thing for us to write about, and then we'd come back in 2 days or the next day or whenever it ended up being for 2 pages of a short story, like super short, like almost flash fiction.
Right.
And I felt like that really helped spark the creative process, because when you have limitations, they require creativity in a way.
I agree. The contest that I spoke of previously, that's what it does for me. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't give you any, most of the time it gives you a genre, a character, and a setting, right? So you have to take these 3 things, and quite often they don't go together at all. I had one that was a haunted ATM. I had to write one about a haunted ATM in the middle of a city for a single father, right? And
right.
Who's going to write a story about a haunted ATM, really? It's like an old Twilight Zone episode.
Or Ghost.
Or Ghost, yeah. But it turned out well. It actually turned out I had a small production company take that and turn it into a short film that they sent out on the film festival circuit and did pretty well with it. So I was pretty happy. And,
right.
And it was all because of that contest and that specific prompt that did it, And like you said, it makes you be more creative because it's outside your wheelhouse. It's not something you would normally do or write about or anything. And now suddenly you have, like, that contest has a 7-day window. You have to write the story in 7 days. So it makes you don't have time to question it. You just have to write it. So
yeah, and you'll definitely get writers submitting who just write, and
right.
They're not overthinking it when they write, and so
right.
you get probably stronger first drafts for people because you just need to put it on the page in the first place.
Right. I agree. I think most writers that I've met tend to overthink things, question where they went with the plot. Should I make this left turn? Should I make a right turn? When you have that challenge, you don't have that luxury. You don't get the chance to go back and question it. We gave them 6 weeks, so it wasn't quite a stressful thing. But we had some people who just felt like it was outside of what they were interested in writing, which is totally valid. We had other people who were hoping the anthology was going to be more about what we were currently working on as individuals. And we just felt that we wanted something that was kind of cohesive and something that the reader would know what they were getting when they picked up, and it worked out.
There were things that they can count on.
Right.
Like the same setting at the least. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, how many, 14 different takes on the same little abandoned town, And if the abandoned town part is not your thing, then the next anthology might. The next anthology we have we've already got planned, but we have a much broader theme to try to include more people that felt like this was too limiting.
Right. So, and can we talk about that yet? Or?
I don't know. Christine and I just talked about it last week, so I don't know if we're ready. We don't want to announce it prematurely. We sort of want to. I'm working on a different anthology right now, and then the Coffee House Writers Group is working to announce, I think, in April, and then hopefully for a summer release.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, I'm not gonna bring it up yet. I think I'll let Christine probably announce it. But
yeah, that's probably good. And for people who may be wondering what we're talking about when we say that the restriction requires creativity, it's kind of like there are several movies where you're stuck in space, right? There's Apollo 11,
right?
There's Gravity, and there's The Martian,
right.
And with limited resources, they have to figure out how to get this done,
right.
So I guess it's kind of like that.
They got to figure out how to make it new and different than what's come before them,
mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think they came out strong. The writers who did, a couple of them did not follow the prompts. Most of them did, but a couple of them did not. But it's amazing. We have Native American mysticism in there. We have cross-gender stories about a woman who feels like she's actually a man. We have Star Wars references. We have passed on relatives come back to life. I mean, it's all over the map. It's all over the map. And I think it's because people had to step out of their comfort zone to get there. So
okay. And then so when you're not writing part of the anthology. What are you writing on? What are you working on?
Well, I have 4 books currently out, the first of which was a Western that I wrote. And right now I'm working on the sequel to that. I also have a coming-of-age novel about a young boy coming of age the summer that he sort of has to choose to be a man. My wife and I put out every year a Christmas story, an original Christmas story about this elf that we created who literally saves Christmas every year. And that's what we send out as a Christmas card to family and friends and fans and whoever else who wants one.
Literally saves Christmas?
Literally saves Christmas just about every year.
In the same way that the Grinch literally steals Christmas, or in a...
Very much in the same vein, right? There's the feel, like when I first started writing it, the feel I wanted was those old claymation holiday specials,
Sure.
right? I wanted that. It's a non-denominational story, and it literally is just this misfit band of elves and her friends, right? And some crisis threatens to close down Christmas every year. We had one of the 12 days of Christmas came up missing last time. We had, let's see, what else did we have? We have it's a wide variety of people, and mostly it brings back the iconic characters. It brings back, like, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer made an appearance in this last one. We've had Frosty in them before. We had Mistletoe threatened to take over the pine tree forest one year, and our little elf and her boyfriend, who's from Atlantis, and her band of friends, such as a polar bear, literally stumble upon rescuing Christmas every year. It's one of the most personal projects we do. We're hoping to talk to some studios about having it made into some holiday classics of their own.
Sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a blast. It's a blast. Every year during the summer, I say I'm going to write it so that we can have it done in time. And every year I'm struggling to finish it right around Thanksgiving or the first week of December. I'm really under the gun. And that's part of that pressure for me, right? It's part of me being accountable to have it done.
And the pressure is really what helps drive you.
I write better under pressure because I'm one of those that gets lost in the possibilities. Left turn, right turn, forward, backwards, I get lost in those and I let them slow me down. And then when I have a ticking clock, I don't have the luxury of that. I just have to choose a direction and keep going.
It sounds like you need to create a deadline for you every day.
I do.
Yeah, because it's for me, planner. I need a paper planner. I know some people work fine with the digital planner. I need a paper. For one, I need the satisfaction of crossing it off. And on almost every day of the week, I have write. Sometimes I'll say hours or pages or something.
Right.
And then when I cross it off, it feels so good.
It does. There's an old quote, and I don't remember who said it. It wasn't me. Some writer somewhere in the past said, "I hate to write, but I love to have written." And that really literally describes me.
Yeah, it's kind of like I like eating, but I don't like to cook.
Right, right. Yeah.
Or I don't like the dirty dishes, something to that effect.
Yeah, I don't like the cleanup. Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, I've been doing it a long time. I started writing when I was 21, and I'm a lot older than that now, but it's always been there,
Well, what made you want to start writing at 21?
Stephen King.
Stephen King?
Stephen King made me want to write. I was a huge fan. I still am a huge fan of Stephen King, and I felt like no matter what was going on in his stories, they were all character-driven. I like to think that most of my stuff is character-driven as well, and it all stemmed from him. It stemmed from... he was the first writer that really just made me choose to stay in as opposed to go out with my friends or choose to read instead of watch television. He was the first guy that got me. I wanted to be him. For my first 5 years or so, I tried to write horror and emulate him and his style, and I realized that I was not him and I was me, and after that it sort of took off.
That's very cool. I know for a lot of people, especially from my generation, that person was J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that she wanted me to start writing, but I want to read rather than watch TV. That's definitely her.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Her stories are all pure story from start to finish, and they're incredible. They're incredible.
Okay, very cool. So in part of the challenge in creating this, what kind of process do you have to go through actually from turning it into a bunch of mostly Word documents, I'm guessing, into this paperback book that I have in front of me? Well,
from start to finish, once we settled on the theme, the hardest work of editing any anthology is reading the work. As enjoyable as it is, you have to read it with a critical eye, and you have to read it as an editor as opposed to just a reader. So the hardest work is to read all of these. And then I had said in the initial prompt, I had said, I would not change anything for content. Send me your best work. I'm not changing content, but I'll check punctuations and spelling and whatnot. And so that's the most time consuming part because I had 14 stories. I had to do that too, including my own. 3 writers who I thought were on the bubble of a yes or a no. And having never met those 3 writers before, I thought, I don't know how they're going to take somebody they don't know telling them, hey, maybe you should think about this, maybe smooth it out. And then I thought, every editor I have ever sent a story to tells me that. That's part of the job. And so they all took it to heart. They all stepped up to the plate. And I gave them just broad guidelines of what I felt could have been smoothed out. And they really all went in and took it over. So the hard part is that. The easy part for me is taking all of these documents and first creating an entire Word document with every story in it, laid out, margins, all that good stuff. And then you have to create a PDF from that. And then the proofreading begins. You got to proof everything. Does the table of contents match the page numbers that the stories go? And they didn't first time around. As good as you think you are at punctuation and spelling and whatnot, there's always things that slip through, especially when you're reading, 40,000 words and trying to keep it all fresh. But we did it. We sent out contracts for everybody to sign because 100% of the profit, 100% of the proceeds of this book go to the writers group. 100%. Not a single writer got paid, including myself. Everybody got a copy of the book as payment, and they did it every bit as much as I did for the love of the group, and I try to help it move forward.
Yeah, that's great. I try to, as a critique group leader, I critique Long Beach. I would definitely hope that when there are writers receive editing and suggestions that they really work with it, because that's what we try to do in critique groups themselves.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because when I started this, only a few of the group members knew me. Like I was active 6 years ago, and then I wasn't active for a while doing my own thing, and then Christine kept pushing me. You got to get on Facebook and talk to the people on the groups and do these meetups so that when we launch this, people will at least know who you are and at least respect you on some level. And so I got more active in the Facebook groups and all that stuff. And she was right. I had people. It was odd. I got a lot of accolades from people. I got a lot of people thanking me for putting in the work. I got a lot of people for that. But when they had a complaint or a suggestion, they would go to Christine. And I told her, I said, listen, just tell them to come straight to me. I'm not some egotistical guy who's gonna shut them down,
Yeah, maybe they're worried because they don't know you.
Yeah, exactly. So I said, we want to make the book the best that it can be. And if you've got a suggestion or if you found something I missed, get it to me because I can fix it, So eventually we had a few, but for the most part, they all went to Christine first.
Very cool. And yeah, I know for me, about half my Facebook friend list is now writers.
That's huge, that group now.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's pretty big. And to get involved, it's just there's people that are posting there all the time, and we want everybody to feel engaged. So we're always encouraging people to post on the group, comment on other people's, check out what they're posting. There's a lot of helpful information. Right. Something that I saw recently that it totally skipped my mind, that somebody posted a quick tip for first drafts of you put brackets into things that you need to readdress later. Right. Just bracket so-and-so person name. This is where their name would go, but I haven't thought of their name yet. Instead of, I'm on my first draft. I got to put my first draft down while I'm in my writing group. Right. Go on Google and it's like, is this a good name? Is this confusing something else? Because like me, I take pretty good care of my opinion. I don't just say, Benjamin, just some random name out there. I'll pick from it, and then I would come back to it. I was like, oh crap, now I'm out of my groove. What am I doing?
Right. Yeah, it pulls you out. It's more important, I think, just to keep the momentum going once you have it. And then come back to the bracket later.
My point was like I've been doing that for about the past year, maybe even 2. Can't remember. And I never thought for a second to post that tip to the writers group. And that's a lot of tip that a lot of people still can use. Sure. But somebody else posted, it's like, oh yeah, why did that? Yeah. So it's like, even stuff, you get your thumbs up that stuff, you comment it, you push it, you get it on people's feed. So we're all working together
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. It's important in this day and age. Social media is literally the way we communicate now, and our goal with the anthologies is to get these writers writing. We have, I don't know what the last figures are, but I think we're approaching 3,000 members. And there's got to be a way to get these people excited about writing, until it comes time to actually do the work.
Sure.
That was our goal with the anthology. It's our goal with the next 2 or 3 that we've got planned already. And we just want to get more and more people involved on that side of it. Because if you have not been published, that first one, man, is like going to the moon,
So for writers who have not been a part of our anthologies, what do you say, because they're not getting money, what do you say to them to encourage them to submit?
Well, the whole idea is to put some work out there, I don't think anybody becomes a writer to stay an introvert and keep it all to themselves and not share, you don't become a poet that way. And I think that a shared experience like this with other people in the same boat as you can really help. You can exchange ideas with each other. You can commiserate with each other. And I think ultimately the goal is to get some words down on paper. Even if you attempt it and decide not to turn something into the anthology, the whole goal is to get you to write in the first place. There's a reason you call yourself a writer. There's a reason you've joined a writer's group, and that's to write, Whether it ever gets to me or Christine or anybody, that's on you. But it's definitely, there's nothing like the feeling of that first book come out with your story in it. There's nothing like it, and honestly speaking, in the publishing industry these days, very few people are getting paid for this type of stuff anymore. Very few people. Like there's some magazines online, there's some print magazines, and very few of them are paying anything. So you do it for the love of it, and you're not looking to get rich.
Right, and also this is a good cause.
It is, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, because Coffee House Writers Group, I wish it ran on good feelings.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. A lot of it comes out of members' pockets.
Yes, a lot of it's out of pocket.
Having something like this to help fund the group, obviously we don't get all of the money that Coffee House Writers Group takes in through just anthologies.
No, of course not.
Right.
Of course not.
But it's always nice to have those.
It is. I know that the anthology sold very well the first month, and it took a little pressure off Christine and the board, who have been footing the bill for a lot of things lately. And I don't know where it's not my business to know where the money went to, but I know some areas that it went to, and it's helping the group, and the whole basis for it is find a way to help the group that has helped you for so long. That Christine is one of the most tireless workers that I've ever met. If anybody's busier than I am, it's her, and she is nothing but focused on this group. This has become her life, this group. And so to have somebody put their heart and soul into something that supports the arts and supports local artists, no matter what your art is, if you can give back to that organization, why wouldn't you? And I think that was sort of the feeling behind all of the writers who submitted to this. They were giving back.
And then there's the added bonus of other people read your work.
Right.
And, what if they like you? What if you have an author page?
Absolutely.
Or you can even, these people are so accessible, you can friend them on Facebook.
Right.
And then you have not just a good writer in your friends group, but someone that you can follow through their whole career, be a part of their process, join them. This is an engaging thing. Read their work before anyone else. Have them read yours, maybe.
Yeah. Listen, this is to go beyond that a little bit. This is Southern California, right? This is the land of opportunity for the arts.
Absolutely.
There are producers everywhere you turn. The guy in the next room is probably a producer, right? That's what Southern California is. And if that is your goal, then the only way to reach those people is to get something for them to look at. And if they happen to stumble upon your story in an anthology like this, you never know, right? There's not everybody's out there for Hollywood and all that stuff, but that's your point exactly, is that you never know where it's going to go. You make a good friend, you make an ally, you meet someone you love.
Exactly. And a lot of it is through networking.
Right.
And when I was first deciding to become a writer, I went to the San Diego Comic-Con International. I went to a panel there. It was about breaking into comics or something like that. And this writer says you need two of three things. You need to be persistent, you need to get lucky, or you need to be good. So two of those three things. Like if you're lucky and persistent, you don't need to be good. If you're good and persistent, you don't need to be lucky. So someone raised their hand and asked, "Oh, how do you get lucky?" And he said, "Move to Los Angeles."
Yeah, that's true, right? LA or New York? New York, if you're a photographer and you want to shoot fashion, you go to New York because then you can just stumble into it. Out here, it's all about entertainment.
Yeah, but to add to that, in order to get lucky in Los Angeles, you can't just stay in your apartment all day and write in your notepad and I still haven't been discovered.
Right.
So they will interact with people.
Yeah. Well, there's book launch parties all the time. If we're talking specifically for writers, there are authors everywhere in Southern California, and there are book launch parties, and there are book signings that you can go to. There are huge book events, for crying out loud. The Festival of Books happens every year. There's a ton of different festivals just for books, and if you get to those, you meet people, right? I mean, it's amazing the people that you can approach at these things. And again, authors of all genres attend, agents attend, producers attend. I mean, everybody's looking for the next big thing from their side. And if you're not there, you can't be it.
Mm-hmm. So did you always live in Los Angeles or did you come here?
I was born on the East Coast, came out when I was 7.
So not for writing at the time, I don't think.
Right, yeah. So I've been out here since then. For a long time, I did those things. I did the LA Times Festival of Books every year. I went to book signings. When I was very young, in my 20s, I was a book dealer out here before the internet was big and took away all the business. But the beauty of being a book dealer for me was I would go to book signings and I would have these first editions and I would get them autographed by the authors and sell them. But eventually you become a fan of some of these authors, and I became friends with some fairly big names, bestseller list names, just because I would show up. I didn't always show up with a book. Sometimes I just showed up to be there. It was just being and surrounding yourself with that world. And that helps, it helps. It inspires you to write more. It inspires you to read more. You find little gems of books you didn't expect to find. It's incredible.
Great. Do you have any in particular that you'd recommend that still go on?
Well, you got to follow the signings, right? I mean, bookstores are going away, unfortunately, and a lot of the signings are people you've never heard of, and those are the people you need to show up and support.
Oh, sure.
Right? Yeah. Like everybody will find out about a Stephen King book signing or Dean Koontz or
those would be crowded.
J.K. Rowling or whoever, right? Those are the big ones you all hear about. They make the news. Everybody's talking about it. You can't get in. But, you got smaller book signings from local authors or whatever. These are the people that are making an attempt.
And you never know which one of them could be your editor someday.
Right.
The acquisitions editor even.
Exactly. Or just one of them can offer you that small bit of advice that makes it worthwhile for you. Mm-hmm. And we all need that, I mean, like I said, I need to be accountable to people to get my stuff done. Not so much anymore as I used to, but I used to have that push. And now I've learned that push comes from different areas and it works for me. And it also comes from the ticking clock, right? So I need that push. But if you surround yourself with people in the industry or people trying to make a difference or people just trying to get their book out there, you never know. You never know what could happen in this town.
And there's a lot of great advice from small people out there as well. Sure. A lot of us are just one good piece of advice from breaking into a much higher level of writer.
Right. And you never know where that's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
You never know, I'm trying to remember the best piece of advice I ever got about writing. And it was probably something as simple as just write.
Yeah, writers write.
I mean, that's what they always say, right? They say, don't be a writer, be writing. And it's a difference, right? Like, I'm a writer, yes, but am I working on anything right this minute? No, And the only way to get the work done is to do the work. It's the only way.
I think for me, somewhere around the line, one of the pieces of advice I got was to make the first page engaging.
Right.
And that really helped me break out of what a lot of us started out doing was the writer's warm-up at the very beginning, where you're just trying to lay down a foundation and there's nothing actually happening.
Right. Yeah. And that's we all face that, Not to sound like a broken record, but Stephen King said the best advice he ever got was to finish the book and then go back and cut 20%. Not necessarily from the beginning, but cut 20% from the overall book. And he claims he still does that to this day, although his books keep getting longer and longer and longer.
Yeah.
But all the writing is worthwhile, but none of it makes a lick of difference if you don't sit down and actually do the work.
When you're trying to give writers advice about their craft into short stories specifically, because I know that you've worked for short stories,
Right.
what do you say for people, despite what the genre is or the prompt is for another anthology, even if it's not Coffee House Writers Group, for a short story, what are you looking for?
What I usually tell people when they ask me advice on writing short stories in general is you can't waste words, right? When you have a novel that has to be 300 pages, you're going to put some filler in there, right? You're going to put some exposition in there you might not normally put in, or you're going to be flowery in your descriptions, whether it's good or bad. But for a short story, you can't waste a word. Every word has to be there for a reason, right? It doesn't have to be an action word. It doesn't have to be descriptive, but it has to be there for a reason. I remember I saw Dean Koontz once do a speech at the LA Times Festival of Books, actually, and he got up there and he probably had 400 people in the room. I mean, everybody wanted to see him speak. And he came out and he brought the first page of his last book, but he brought 2 copies, and 1 copy was his first draft and 1 copy was the final printed.
Oh, God.
And he went through, and it took a couple hours, and he went through line by line why it started here and why it ended up this way. And it's literally the most amazing thing you've ever seen, because it shows the amount of work that has to go into it, right? And that sort of came off your short story subject, but it's the same thing. He was showing you how he went from this page of sort of randomness and exposition to this final printed page that made sense and it had focus and purpose. And it's the same thing with short stories, right? You can write a short story, and I could encourage people all the time, just put it down on paper. Everybody's so worried about how long should this be or how many pages should that be. And the truth of the matter is a story should be as long as it needs to be.
That reminds me of back in my collegiate years and before that, writing essays. And they had to be, especially in high school and earlier, a certain length.
Right.
And that stunted my creativity and how well I could write an essay. They all sucked. I did not start out well in English, and it wasn't until, I guess, especially how they were very strict with their format. Concrete detail, commentary, commentary. And while that's a good foundation, it's kind of like, if you're familiar at all with the science behind atoms, how there's the Bohr's model and there's a nucleus and then they have the rings with the electrons. And that's not accurate at all. But it's a good basis for understanding. And that's kind of felt like what happened in English as far as a word count and structure like that is concerned. It may not be accurate, but if you understand that, that'll help you later.
Right. I think that essays and strict word counts are important, right? It did at that level stunt your creativity, but it wasn't about being creative for an essay. It was about getting the information across, right? But there are all kinds of reasons why you should be able to write within a word count, and one of them is an anthology who has a word limit. If you ever hope to be a reporter, magazine author, a magazine writer, anything like that, any kind of technical writing at all, they work off specific, like newspapers in general, although most of them are online now, work on paper space. How many inches do you get? Okay, so you get 4 inches. How many words does that take? Well, that takes 750 words to fill. Now you have 750 words to write an article that makes sense to people and connects with people, and you have to do it every day or every week. So it's good to be able to have that ability, but I think once you get into the world of fiction, it's less important. You know, I mean, the contest that I enter all the time has a very strict word limit. You lose points if you go over by 1 word. You lose 100 points or something like that. So for that stuff, I think word count is important, and it also makes you concise in your thinking. It makes you really figure out what's the best way to state this idea in the least amount of words. You know, you have to be able to get the idea across to people of all walks of life with language. You know, with language.
I know for me, the problem wasn't keeping it short. The problem was writing it long enough.
Right.
They wanted 4,000 words or something, and I would just always end with 3,000. I was like, I got to write 1,000 words of crap in here.
Yeah.
Completely BS
Right.
the rest of it, and I mean that's why it was working for me. But maybe there were other ways of filling that out that I didn't know at the time.
Yeah. It's amazing. Writing is, I think I said it in the anthology, actually, in the introduction, but my English teacher in high school said when I was toying with writing, I started when I was in junior high. We had a school contest for writing, and from there it just kind of grew. And in high school, my English teacher said to the class, you have to want to roll around in the language if you want to be any good as a writer at all. And I think that stuck with me all these years.
So what does roll around in the language mean?
You gotta love the language, You gotta know that there's 6 different ways to say something, anything at all, and 50 different ways to say some things. And you have to want to be able to craft a sentence that is not confusing and yet not necessarily the way the reader would expect it to come out.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really love about the English language as opposed. I mean, I have tried studying other languages, and I don't want to dock the other languages.
Right.
Start something here, but one thing I love about the English language is how many words there are for one thing.
Sure.
And how even if they mean the exact same thing, the way they're used sometimes are not the same, so they can imply something different.
Right.
Like yell and shout are like the same thing.
Right.
But they don't always work for each other. That's not you can't take one out and put it in and replace it with the other every time.
Right.
Sometimes it's different.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. And I agree with that. I wish I had looked it up before I came here, but the rule that we've all learned in elementary school that says I before E except after C, there are something like 35 or 36 words in the English language that don't follow that rule. And
even when you do there's something at the end of that says except is in neighbor and way or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. There's like 5 words in the English language that actually follow that rule that they teach us. And there's like 36 or 37 of them that break that rule every time. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like neighbor. Neighbor spell N-E-I, and by that rule it should be I-E.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because of the end of the rule says as in, except for as in neighbor and way, where you have the GH after it or something, and the A sound.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing, man. The language is,
even then.
It's an amazing language. I could see where it confused people from another country,
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm studying Japanese right now, and something that they had said, I'm not completely sure if this is true because I'm still a beginner, that each word sounds like it's spelled.
Okay.
As opposed to us, where the letter A can be pronounced five different ways.
Right.
And things like that. It's
that sounds like Japanese is a lot like Hawaiian in that way. Yeah. Hawaiian is you pronounce every letter exactly the way it's spelled.
Yeah. I mean things on one hand, I wish that everything was spelled the way that pronunciation is spelled in the dictionary.
Right.
On the other hand, it's really great for poetry.
Yeah.
Language like that, because there's so many double entendres and things that you can really purposefully, you can mislead the reader or in some cases the viewer.
Sure.
I remember this old cartoon where there's this thing that this old lady shouts that says attack, attack, attack. And you think like fighting attack. Right. But what was actually mean, it was a tack. As in like a little thumb piece thing. Sure, wow. It was called they ended up renaming it like a thief's something. I'll find it in post.
That's funny, yeah. It's amazing, and my whole purpose for being here today and the whole purpose for working with Christine and the group is to just get people writing, we saw a lot of years where the arts were looked down upon. We saw that schools cutting programs. We saw all of this stuff. But now we're starting to see it turn around. It's becoming more acceptable to be a writer again, and it's becoming acceptable to be an artist and a painter and a sculptor, whatever it is you choose your medium to be, photography. And, it's who am I, right? I'm nobody. You've never heard of me before. And at the same time, I'm someone who's willing to make that push for people. You know, my wife and I have always been involved in the arts, especially with kids, with younger generation. We've always supported it. We've always pushed it in the young people that we know. It's just important, you know.
What do you think that writing people doing the arts, what do you think that helps bring for the world, for someone that maybe says, get a real job, or, you know, whatever?
Well, I think the whole thing is it's an escape. You know, it's an escape from your real job, or it can be just the opposite. It can be something to learn from. It can be, people want to experience other cultures but don't have the means by which to go travel to other countries. It can be anything. But for me, it's always been an escape. It's always been, you can take a trip anywhere you want without ever leaving your house. You know, all you got to do is pick up a book. It's amazing. If you find a writer who can connect with you on an emotional level, it opens up the world. It really does. And I think that's what I want to convey. No matter what the subject matter is you decide to write about. And writing is all forms. I'm talking poetry, I'm talking technical writing, I'm talking everything has value to it. I think it was Winston Churchill who during the war was asked if they should close down the arts programs in the schools, and he said, then what are we fighting for? And I think that's a telling statement, right? It's art is important. It is important. Right. It's important for us to connect to each other. It's important for us to connect to our world, and that's what it should be.
Art really does help connect us on a level that's we need to exchange ideas.
Sure.
And people talk about, you know, all of the things that happen with the earliest civilizations, ancient Greece and places like that, where ports, there are great places for exchanging ideas and help build their technology, but it's more than the technology.
It is, absolutely. It's the people behind it.
Yeah.
It always has been.
Yeah. Exchanging the arts helps learn each other's culture, make people more tolerant, understand, hey, there's more ways of life than just this one strict thing that I've been raised to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what it does? It's a great leveler among classes, right? It's a great leveler because
absolutely
you could get a guy that's working in the mines for 6 out of 7 days a week. He comes out of the mines and he sits down and he writes his thoughts, or he sits down and writes some piece of fiction for his own escapism. And then you could get somebody at the higher echelons, you know, the President of the United States or Prime Minister or whatever, and they can sit down and write or paint or draw or sculpt or take photographs, and it literally puts you on the same playing field as people across the classes. And in this country, class is there's too much emphasis on class, and anything that can bring it all together, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah, it's all just about the written word.
Right. Right.
Or I guess if you're doing other mediums.
Or the piece of clay, or whatever.
The photograph does not know or care about the person behind the lens.
Exactly.
About where they came from and things like that.
That's right. That's right. However, people seem to be interested in the story behind the piece, whether it's a painting or a photo or a story. People are always interested in where it came from within you. And I've seen that time and again. But it doesn't matter where you come from, just where the idea comes from. And I think that's important. Yeah,
people will ask creators all the time, even someone as small as me, where do your ideas come from? You know, you're sharing every week.
Right. Do you have a good answer for that?
Oh, I should have thought of that before I brought that up. My answer for that would be other art.
Yeah.
Really. It's so much... I would like to say comes from my dreams, or because literally some did come from my dreams, but even my dreams, they come from the exterior world around me. Right. Comes from pieces that are really old. I'm inspired by everything from the oldest story of Gilgamesh to a movie that I saw a week ago.
Sure.
That I see those and it'll spark something in me that it may not even be that related. Like there was this one quote that was being presented to at Writers of the Future award ceremony that L. Ron Hubbard said. I forget what the whole quote is. It's a long quote, and said, "We live in a machine world." And then out of nowhere, I just had the inspiration for a completely new story that I did not have any groundwork for at all, and I just had the idea in my head. And
it's amazing, right?
Yeah, more often that'll come through not just a quote or words like that, but it will come from another piece of art, a video game, a song, anything like that. So
Right.
for people who want to be inspired and generate ideas, just see what other people are doing.
Yeah. For me, it's just being open, right? Not just to other art, but being open to the world, you
Oh,
know?
for sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, literally walk down the street, look at things, just be open to it. So many times because of school and work and family and, you get these blinders on. And the reality is the world's a pretty cool place, and
Hmm.
inspiration can come from anywhere. It comes from art a lot for me as well, but it can come from anything. I can't tell you how many stories I've had that were just because I overheard a snippet of a conversation.
Right.
I have no idea what the
Or
conversation
you
was
have a
about, but I heard
conversation
a
with a
sentence.
stranger.
Yeah, yeah. My story, Dahlia, in my book, was literally I had stopped at this local liquor store for a Pepsi every morning on the way to work. Every single morning. I had done that for maybe a year before I ever bothered to ask the girl what her name was behind the counter who took my money every day.
Yeah.
And I asked what her name was, and she said her name was Dahlia. I thought, well, that she was Hispanic, and I wasn't expecting the name Dahlia to come out of that. And
Okay.
so my preconceived notion went out the window. And by the time I got to my truck, out to the street, I had the character Dahlia from my story, who doesn't match that woman at all, but just her name and the fact that it resonated with me because it wasn't what I was expecting. It then sort of triggered this story, and it was literally a stranger in my life who had seen it almost every day for a year.
That's cool. Yeah.
So it comes from anywhere.
Yeah, being observant to everything around you.
Right.
One time, my writing professor in college, just one class, she said, or maybe it wasn't even her, but that's who I'm attributing it to, said she was driving down a freeway and saw a guy on the side, like on an off-ramp thing, selling bat houses,
Wow.
and thought, what has led to this person selling bat
Right.
houses on the side of the road?
Right.
What is their story? And then just try to I mean, you could ask, but
Sure.
it's kind of more fun to just make it up what you think it is.
Yeah. My wife and I do that all the time. We're driving down the road. We carpool to work every day, and we're driving down the road, and we'll see something odd or somebody does something funny, and for the next 5 or 10 minutes, we've built this entire story around that one little incident,
Hmm.
And it's not a special talent or gift. It's just something that's in all of us,
Yes.
We all have it. It's just whether we choose to exercise it or not.
Yeah, and it does need exercise.
It does, absolutely.
Just like you can't run a marathon the first time you try running.
Right, exactly. It's the same thing. And writing a book is much like running a marathon. In fact, Clive Barker, who's a name from the past that most people won't remember anymore, once told me at a book signing that I went to because he was having a book signing, and he had been ordained. If you don't know who Clive Barker is, he had been ordained by Stephen King as the next master of horror. Stephen King said, "I have seen the face of horror in the future, and it is Clive Barker."
That's a comment you take
That's
seriously.
pretty big, right? So I went to meet him, and he was a great guy, and we talked. It's funny because he wanted to talk about my writing, and we talked about it for a while, and I said, it surprises me how long it takes. And he said, writing a novel is like going through an entire pregnancy because it takes about the same amount of time if you stick with it. It takes about the same amount of time, and eventually you go through the same amount of pain and discomfort. So take that with you.
Well, I'm not sure what the women in the room would say,
Yeah.
Or on the other end of this podcast, but we could ask the female writers,
Right, there you
who
go.
have given birth
There you
before.
It certainly was not my quote.
Back
But
it
yeah,
up.
it's. I mean, this man had been ordained to be the next king for crying out loud, and he was for a time one of the most popular horror writers of my generation, anyways. The art made him relate to somebody like me who was just starting out, and all the other people in the room. We all became sort of on the same level. We were peers because we were all writers.
Yeah, and then people, when they see your stuff and it's good to them,
Right.
it doesn't matter where you come from if
Right.
you have, even if you have connections, although connections are good to have.
In every walks
Yeah.
of life, all walks of life.
Yeah, all walks of life. Shouldn't judge someone for like in Ratatouille, if you've seen that,
I have.
where the chef Gusteau says anyone can cook.
Yeah,
And that,
true.
yeah, that great art can come from anywhere.
It's true. It's absolutely true. I don't know. I'm just a fan of art. We are open to it. My wife and I are open to art. We've been through all of it, And I was going to bring up the fact that very often we tend to pigeonhole people by what they last wrote or what we last read by them or what their last
Sure.
project was. I had been known for a long time as a Western author because my first 2 books were Westerns. And then in Beggar's Crossing and Dahlia, I went the complete opposite direction. Beggar's Crossing is kind of a horror story that I wrote. And I had someone come to me and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you wrote this. You know, it's so different from what you normally wrote and what you normally write." And I thought, well, I don't necessarily normally write anything. You know, I'm comfortable there, but I also seem to be comfortable over here. I just wrote a thriller short story for this contest that I'm involved in, which is going on right now. And I had somebody say that too, like, "Wow, you write thriller really well, but I thought you were a Western writer." And so the whole idea is if you're a writer, you're a writer. And if you put the work in, I think you could probably write anything, whether you're comfortable with it or not. You know, and the whole idea for me is to get some sort of visceral reaction from the reader, right? I don't necessarily try to disgust people but I could, I think,
Sure.
you know? And so did I want to scare people with this story? I wanted to get them a little creepy feeling down the spine a little bit, I think.
People like that?
Yeah, I think so, you know? So any kind of reaction, good or bad, you know,
Yes.
is what you're going for.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to buy Beggar's Crossing today or tomorrow, where should they go?
It is available online at Amazon. And you can search Beggar's Crossing. It's the only one that comes up when you do. I've tried it. You can buy it directly from the Coffee House Writers Group. I think most of the leaders have copies available to them. I know Christine sort of gives them out to sell. And you're helping a great group of people, and all the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds goes back to this organization. Nobody took a dime for this thing.
And we're on chwritersgroup.org.
I did not know that.
That is the Coffee
That's
House
the
Writers
actual-
Group
okay.
website.
Support them. They support writers of every ilk, and not just not just locally, but across the globe now, I guess.
And if people wanted to follow you, where could they do that?
Also, Amazon. Amazon is the best place to find me. I have a Facebook page and a blog, neither of which I keep up with as much as I should, or as much as my wife tells me I should. Blog is www.wordslayer.blogspot.com. And then the Facebook page is just my name, Bill Wilbur. 4 books out, and 2 more hopefully this year. So,
All right. Well, great. Thank you very much for coming down.
thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. We have this podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. YouTube video is just a still, so don't get excited. There's no video version of this. Please like, rate, favorite, share, whatever you do on the platform that you've seen this on. It really does us a lot of good, helps us find exposure. I would like to thank my great team here at Coffee House Writers Group, Christine Bryant, Director of Technology, Steve Hirschberger. I, once again, am J. Bryan Jones. And until next time, go forth and create.